Okay, well, what if I told you I actually give over 30% of my salary to charity? Would you be impressed? Because I pay close to that in taxes, and so that counts, right? Like that's me giving, and then when I add to that my voluntary charity, right? Debbie just made the distinction between mandatory and voluntary, but I want to lump them together and say I give like 35% of my salary in as charity. Does that sound right? I mean, is it fair to claim that I give 35% of my salary or not? Debbie, you introduced the distinction, so do you think that's fair? Like, I'm including mandatory.
Well, yeah, I've actually had this conversation before with people about taxes versus philanthropy. And so I'm not sure I count taxes as tzedakah, although I guess originally that's what it was meant for. Um,
What about other people?
I,
Abby, do you think taxes count as charity?
Well, I guess maybe in a way it does simply because taxes, you're in a way you're helping the community, you're helping other people. I mean, that's not the intention, and the intention, of course, is okay. You live here, you have to pay this percent of money, but in a loose way, you could translate it as charity. And going back to what Julie said about giving more than 10%. I think that's great. Like if you could afford it, you definitely should. So however much you could, and yes, I agree with Debbie that 10 is like the minimum percent, but however much you could give, depending on what your expenses are, is how much you should give. So going back to the question, taxes, I guess loosely you could consider it charity, but normally you wouldn't because like
Great.
it's expected,
Yeah,
but in a
great.
way it
And
is
Neil is saying
because
something
it
similar. He's
is like
saying
helping
give till it
like
pinches. I'm reading
the
his
community,
chat
the
here. Give till it
schools,
pinches,
uh, like
but
other
but
people.
on
So
a
in a
sliding
loose way
scale.
it
In
is.
other words, you should give as much as you can, but like if you can't give as much, then it's less. Then that's certainly understandable. This whole question, the distinction between having to give and 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 this notion of what you should or what you ought to give, even when you don't have to. This is a part of the exploration that we're going to take as we begin to figure out what exactly tzedakah is, what exactly the distinction might be, as Debbie already suggested, between tzedakah and charity. So let's take a look at some of the classical Jewish sources. I'm gonna move this slide here. Some of you are looking on a source sheet, but I'm gonna move this slide here. And I think everybody can see now. This first slide is from Maimonides. Does that everybody see that? Yeah.
yep.
So so look, there's no. This is just an opening. Like charity is really important text, and there's no question. I mean, if you've ever been to services on Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, there's this big moment of announcing that charity and repentance and that charity and prayer and repentance are the things which. Hold on, there's just a little noise here. I'm going to close the door. Sorry about that. That charity and prayer and repentance are the things which like affect the full transformation that we're looking for on Rosh Hashanah. And Maimonides goes even I think a step further. If that's a really central declaration of charity, take a look at this Maimonides statement as he opens his discussion of tzedakah. And I'm not translating tzedakah yet because I want us to. That's part of what I want us to figure out. So Debbie, will you read this for us? Just the first paragraph here.
Yeah, we are obligated to take greater care with the commandment of tzedakah than with any other positive commandment, for tzedakah is a sign of the righteous descendants of Abraham, as it says, "For I have singled him out so that he may instruct his children and his household after him, to keep the way of the Lord by doing tzedakah and justice."
Okay, great. So really strong statement here. We are obligated to take greater care with the commandment of tzedakah than with any other positive commandment. So why do you think that is? It doesn't say that in the Torah. That like Maimonides, who's a medieval thinker and codifier of law, says this is number one. Why would we have to be more careful with this than anything else? Any thoughts?
Well, I'm just noticing that sorry, go ahead, Abby.
Well, my oh, sorry. I was just going to suggest, I'm not sure if this is correct, that the reason why it has such a strong emphasis is probably because, like, the whole concept of tzedakah, I make money, I have to give some away. A
Great,
person might automatically say, okay, I did make this
great.
money, I should give some
That's a
of
good
it
answer.
away, but what's the percentage? And I worked
In other
really
words,
hard, like,
charity
why do I have to give this
is
up?
something that you can
So
begin to
maybe
sort of,
it's like there's such an
if it's
emphasis
something that you
because
might
there's a
or
possibly
might not
some
have to
people more
give,
than
then
others a
then
strong
they have to
inclination and
really
desire
take
not
care,
to
because your
because
inclination
someone might
will
think I worked
likely
really
be to
hard, why should I
preserve,
give it up?
and then maybe you won't
Or should
do
I
the
give some of
commandment.
it up? What's the percentage?
Mm. What is charity here? Like, that is to say, I'm already translating it, but what is tzedakah? What does it mean? We have to take greater care with it than anything else. What is it that we have to take greater care with? Like, what's the thing being described here?
I was actually going to add on to what Abby was saying in terms of inclination. I think our inclination often is to care for ourselves along the lines of what you were saying and in other ways. And that maybe what they're saying is like, your inclination is always going to be to care for yourself. So the most important thing is to think of others,
Mm. Hmm. Yeah.
which doesn't specifically define tzedakah, but says like, think outside yourself, think of the community, think of others, and that will like balance out your need to always be thinking, putting yourself first.
Good. Good. Okay. So we've got one definition. Charity might not be giving money. It might be just be doing for other people. In which case, that is a pretty central principle. Any other? I'll throw in the quote here that that Abraham is supposed to instruct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing tzedakah and justice. What do you think he's being asked to do there?
Yeah, I'm curious about the relationship between tzedakah and justice, and if I were to use this, the fact that this is being used as a proof text um, to me indicates that they must think that the authors of the Maimonides here must think that tzedakah and justice are the same thing, right? Otherwise, this wouldn't be a great text to bring forth as proof, because the text says that one has to do tzedakah and justice. Maimonides is trying to prove that tzedakah is the most important. So I wonder if they're being used as synonyms in some sense.
Right. Right. In which case, the greatest thing that we have to take care of is just doing good. In Debbie's language, doing good for other people. In Julie's language, it's just doing good, righteous things, right? Whereas Abby, I think, had a kind of understanding of a more classical version of just giving money, in which case you might, or giving stuff, in which case you might be inclined not to give. Hmm. Okay, so far we have various understandings of what tzedakah could be, but if we look a little bit later in Maimonides, he definitely seems to treat it like it is giving money or giving goods. And in fact, he famously, if you look at the next text, he famously has this list of 8 levels of charity. Has anyone heard of this list? Maimonides' 8 levels of charity? I'm seeing some nodding heads. Okay, so basically he ranks the different forms of charity from the worst kind, which is still pretty good, but there's still the worst kind of tzedakah, all the way up to the highest kind. And the worst, I think, is giving tzedakah begrudgingly. You don't really want to do it. You feel like, ugh, get away from me, but you do it anyway. So then it moves up, and then you want to do it, and then you do it anonymously. That's a big factor. But here is the number one. This is the highest form of tzedakah that there is. And again, in all of these contexts, he seems to be talking about the transference of money. So for now, we'll call it charity. But again, he calls it tzedakah. Abby, you want to read this for us? There are 8 levels of tzedakah. Great. Great. Okay, so what's the highest form of tzedakah?
Sure. There are 8 levels of tzedakah, each greater than the next. The greatest
Giving
level,
someone a job.
above which there is no other, is to
Or
strengthen
giving them
the
a loan.
need of another Jew
Great.
by giving him a
That
present or a
seems
loan,
like good stuff.
or
I'm
making a
into it.
partnership
But is
with
that
him,
charity?
or finding him a job, in order to strengthen his hand until he needs no longer beg from people. As it says, you shall
Is
strengthen
it
him with a
tzedakah? I mean,
stranger
if
who
I
dwells
asked
among
you,
you.
I'm going to give you a job
Leviticus
because I want to do
25:35,
tzedakah,
which is to say,
would that sound right?
strengthen him so he does not fall
Sorry, Abby,
and
you were
will not
starting to
need.
say.
So it says here giving someone a job. Well, that's one way, present or loan. Mhm. Maybe, well, charity, yeah.
I like that you sound confused
No,
because
no, no.
I think you're right
Um,
to sound confused. It's not so
I
clear. I
mean, it
mean,
says
you
here
were doing a
it's
nice
level
job just
tzedakah.
now.
So
You're like,
how
oh,
does
what
that connect
about
to
a
tzedakah? I
job?
guess,
If someone, if I don't have to give them a job, am I giving it? I'm giving it to them, and that's a nice thing to do. So that seems like a freely given
well, so
gift of
charity
some
is,
sort. But what about a loan?
well, okay,
And a loan,
ultimately charity is
I'm
maybe
asking for
give,
it back. Is
like
a
giving to
loan
someone who probably
charity? Is
can't
a
give to
loan
themselves.
tzedakah?
I mean, I don't know, maybe in a side note, well, today's economy, like, it's hard to find jobs, so, like, it's maybe a greater level charity, I don't know, to get a job through someone. Let me connect it back to charity. Giving someone a gift or a loan, so giving someone, why?
Okay, great. No, you're struggling with the right questions here. I mean, it is a form of giving. Maybe it's a nice thing to do, but it feels a little strange to call a loan what we think of as charity, because
It's definitely a
charity
form
you
of
don't think
giving.
of getting
Is it
back, and even what
tzedakah?
I think of as
Well, maybe
tzedakah, I don't
because,
think of getting back. So
no,
wait,
giving them a loan, you
so
expect
why
them
do
to
you
give it
think
back, but
the
maybe you don't
Maimonides
know
thinks it's
how
the
soon you'll
best?
get it back or
What is
how much
better
of
about
it
this
they'll
than
give
even?
back, as opposed to
I
like
mean,
a
because
simple bank
personally, I'd rather someone give
transaction
me
when
50
like, okay,
bucks
you have
than lend me
X amount of
50
years to
bucks. It
pay off
sounds
this amount
great.
of
I'll just go
money.
home. So
Um,
why does
it's
Maimonides
in a
think,
way
no,
a
it's even
charity
better if
because
someone
if it's a
lent me
loan,
50 bucks? Now I
obviously
have to pay it
they're gonna
back. Oh,
get it
hooray.
paid back, but they don't know, but you might not know how soon
Julie,
or
what
how
do you
much
think?
of it they will give back. I
Well,
don't
I'm
know.
just wondering about whether tzedakah is based on the person that's giving it or the person that's receiving it, meaning which is
Hmm.
the which is the important thing to factor here. I mean, the person
Hmm.
that's receiving it is getting something that they didn't have before. Um,
Hmm.
and we've been thinking about the experience for the borrower, but the lender, regardless of what else is, I'm just wondering whether the lender take it if the act is about taking something that belongs to you and now it doesn't belong to you, even if for a short time, or does it matter whether it's hard for me
Because maybe then
to
it,
figure out
well,
which side are we determining the definition of tzedakah about.
Okay,
That was
Julie's struggling with the definition of tzedakah. I see Neil is doing the same thing here. Neil says loan is tzedakah depending on its terms, the collateral, the ability of the borrower to repay. If there's risk, then the giver is accepting the risk, less favorable terms, and it is giving, albeit subtly, as it gives someone the potential to step up and take better care of themselves. Okay, so you're all working out ways in which this could be thought of as giving or charity or tzedakah, but here's what I'm still struggling with. How could it be better than giving? How could it be even better to loan you money than to just give you 1,000?
I've heard the classical response, which is it's always better to help somebody help themselves than for them to be dependent. So you're helping them become an autonomous earner, hopefully. Although that only makes sense to me with the partnership or job, but it doesn't make sense as much with the loan necessarily.
Okay, okay, great. So this is like teach a man to fish, and then you're giving him a job, you're giving him a means to support himself That seems like maybe it could be even better. Does it work for a loan? Is a loan even better than just a free gift?
Kate had typed in the key here is the part where the job or the whether, I think she meant to say, whether the job or loan strengthen the person in need so they're no longer in need.
Okay. Okay, great. So if a job or a loan gets a person to a better place than a gift would, right? If someone repays a loan, she says, then you can loan that money to someone else. Oh, and then the money keeps going. Okay, great. These are good answers. There's some way in which a job, a loan participates more in the general circle of commerce and just gets everyone back on their feet, and a gift just is a one-time, you use it up, it's gone. Okay, although, I don't know, maybe a gift of $20,000 would get you back on your feet. But I think we're struggling with the right thing. Here's another answer.
You could
I'm going to
also,
move to the next. Yeah, Debbie.
sorry, I need to interrupt. I was going to say you could also argue that a loan allows the recipient to have more dignity because there's an
Okay.
assumption there that you can have this for some period of time, but I have all the faith in the world that in the long term you don't even need this. It's just to get you on your feet.
Okay, great.
You
You
know,
know
they
that
say it
I'm,
back.
I'm
It's
glad
not
you.
here. You must have my money in order for you to succeed. Is kind of a different thing.
Okay, terrific. That actually does tells that I'm glad you bridged us there because that brings us nicely to this commentator on Maimonides about 2 centuries later, and he's referencing Maimonides and he says basically the same thing. He says, indeed, the loan is greater than the gift, for it strengthens the recipient, and he need not be ashamed of it. And that's why we're given a positive commandment in the Torah obligating us to lend to the poor. As it says, when you lend money to my people, to the poor among you. So I think he's agreeing with Debbie here in saying that the loan is especially good because it doesn't make you dependent on me and you don't have to feel bad about being the person who takes my money. You're going to pay me back. It's like no big deal, right? So there's a kind of a dignity preservation there. Um, what is also true about what Rabbeinu Bachya is saying here, which is really interesting, and I think brings us to the definition of tzedakah that we've been searching for, is that it's true that the Torah, when it speaks of what we think of as tzedakah, does use this language of lending rather than the language of giving. Right? When you lend money to my people, the Torah doesn't speak of just giving things to people, but actually lending. The word it uses is loaning money to people. So there, in the language of the Torah itself, is sort of surprising. You would think this holy work would speak about, freely giving money, actually often speaks about lending money. And that, I think, takes us to this difference that we've been considering all along between the word charity and the word tzedakah. So what I'd like to do is just take a look at the root of the two words. So take a look at the root of the word for charity. Okay, this is where we get. This is from an etymological dictionary. So this is where we get the word for charity. Let's see. Julie, would you read this for us? I'm not hearing you. Are you muted?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I do.
Okay, mid-12th century, benevolence for the poor, from Old French charité, Christian charity, mercy, compassion, alms, charitable foundation. From Latin, I don't speak Latin, I don't think anybody does, caritatem, nominative caritas, costliness, esteem, affection. In Vulgate, often used as a translation of Greek agape, love.
Okay, it's a little technical here. This is a dictionary, right? But it is true that we get our word from charity in a chain from the Greek word agape, which moves to the Latin caritas, which moves to the French, and then to the English charity. So what is charity? A real definition of the word. What is it to be charitable? Hmm. Good. Okay, we're gonna head there. Like you're right to point out that a tzaddik is a righteous person. So that we'll look at next. But forget about the word for tzedakah for a sec. The word for charity you were beginning to find is just giving of yourself. What's this giving look like? Like what would it mean to give charity? Mhm.
Well, to be charitable, like to give of yourself. Going back to the Hebrew word tzedakah,
Yeah.
I'm guessing maybe that's
Other
why
reads?
the word tzedakah has the same shorosh, the same root word
Well,
as tzaddik,
here
maybe.
it seems
Like
to
to be
go,
charitable, to
at
give
least
of
the root
yourself,
seems
be
to emerge
righteous.
from something which is,
And going back, maybe
the
that's
money
why
seems to be a
it's
means
a
to a larger
hard,
end,
quote unquote, positive
whether it's
commandment that
love
you
or
need to
building up
do.
esteem or showing compassion. It seems to be part of a larger project that is outside of the money, where the money is enabling somebody to achieve some other feeling, status, etc.
Yeah, yeah. We keep coming back to this word love, and that actually is the more typical translation of the Greek
Well,
agape, which in Christian theology means the
to give something
unconditional
like
love of
physical of
God,
yourself, like to give someone money,
the undeserved
to
love of
give
God, even.
something of yourself to someone
Like
else. But
even though we're
I think here
sinful,
it's like
God
something
loves us
physical.
anyway in Christian
Maybe it's
theology.
like giving
So
advice,
if
like
that's
that's nice, and that is
true,
giving of
think
yourself.
about what that might
But
mean for
since it's
charity.
not physical, I'm not
If charity
sure it would
represents the
here be
love that we
considered
get
as
even when we
charity.
don't
But
deserve
that's
it,
also a giving. But I think it's like
then
something physical you could give to someone. Give
then
someone money.
what kind
Give
of giving
someone a
actually is
job
that?
where you get money. Like that's also physical. So I'm guessing. I don't know.
I'm going to bring us to this
Really,
next
I'm actually
text.
having trouble with this concept. I don't think it's how you meant it, but what I heard made me think of like we need to give tzedakah even to people who don't necessarily deserve it. And that just strikes me as all wrong.
Yeah, that's right. Well, let's say I'm a heroin addict, right? Or a gambling addict, and I blow all the money that you give me. So, I mean, I've ruined my own life. I've blown my own money. I'm not working. I'm not doing, like, so do I deserve your charity?
Well, the premise is even questionable. I don't know. Like,
I'm seeing a new,
I don't,
I'm seeing a comment from Kate. Charity seems to have connotations of giving out of love. Then if you don't feel so loving and kind to others, you might stop giving charity. Okay, so that's a potential limitation. It's like if it's all motivated by your good feelings, so then any moment that's the point of charity is that you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart. So if you don't have goodness in your heart that day, then it's just too bad. Okay, so contrast that with the root for tzedakah, which is tzedek. And this is from a very sort of standard dictionary of biblical Hebrew, the Brown Driver Briggs, which I recommend. Debbie, you want to read this for us? Tzedek is the Hebrew word.
yeah. Rightness, righteousness. What is right, just, normal. Rightness, justness of weights and measures. Oh, it's got that
In
balance
that last one, meaning even is used in weights. So like you have the weight that is tzedek, that is right. You have the measure that is tzedek, is the way that it's used in the Torah. So okay, what then is tzedakah? If charity in its root meant the freely given love of a person, even when maybe the recipient doesn't deserve it, what is tzedakah? How is tzedakah different?
Oh, hi.
This isn't talking about love at all. This is talking about what's right. That's what it starts with. It's what is right. It has nothing to do with love.
Sorry.
It's, just you do it because why wouldn't you? It's the right thing to do.
Okay, great. So then So then what's that look like? I mean, how is that different?
It feels like there's like a baseline that we're trying to get everybody at. So some people might have more and some people might have less, and we're trying to reach some kind of equilibrium, not to be too socialist here.
Well, and to your earlier point, it doesn't matter if you're in the mood to give to someone or if you're feeling loving or passionate toward them. It doesn't matter in your awful example of, people wasting my money. It's right. It doesn't matter how I'm feeling about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think this tracks nicely with what Julie was just saying, that, there's a baseline. It's just, we're trying to figure out what is the amount that everyone just should give no matter what. Everybody should give this amount because it's just the right thing to do. Whereas in the earlier model, it really depended on how you felt. Any other differences? What differences between giving because it's the right thing to do versus giving because I want to show you my love?
And also to Julie's earlier point, like, is it the right amount to give or is it the right amount that everyone should have? Mm-hmm. She was talking earlier about, are we talking about the giver and the meaning of tzedakah to them or the person who receives it? So should we be looking at how much I should give or should we be looking at how much others need?
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and
there's a right amount that everybody should have. Yeah. Sorry, Julie.
I was going to say that along those lines, one could argue that tzedakah is about cultivating in the giver a feeling of love. And in this, what is right, normal, righteous, justness, I would think that it really doesn't have to do with character development. It really has to do with kind of making sure that everything is out there in the world as it should be. Mm-hmm. And the means would look very different, right? Like you could give it in this latter one, you could give it in a way that embarrasses somebody. You could give it in a way that makes somebody feel small, and it would still be considered tzedakah. And in the former, it has everything to do with kind of the experience of the giver and how the person receiving it feels. It seems to me.
Yeah. I mean, that makes me wonder which model is more appealing, because it sounds like the way you're describing charity, it's like when it might not happen, and that's the problem. But when it happens, it's like very felt and it's really like a connection between two people. Whereas tzedakah, it's gonna happen. It has to happen. It's the right thing to do. But it can just happen transactionally. Remember, Maimonides' lowest form of charity was you gave even when you didn't want to. That's still tzedakah. Right? Maybe it's not charity, it's tzedakah. Do you prefer one of these frameworks? The charity framework or the tzedakah framework? Which is more appealing?
Sorry, I'm just jumping in to say a functionality thing, which is that there are a couple people who weren't with us when we first started, and I don't know if they're finding the ability to speak like verbally, but there's a little chat box in the bottom left corner if you want to type a comment in for those people who came in late. Okay.
Yeah, actually, so, we're about to close in just a couple. So I would love to hear everybody vote. I mean, if you can use the chat function, I'd love to hear just everybody's take on.
I think both are great, but
what do you prefer?
Better,
the right thing to do model, tzedakah,
wait,
or the
I think
charity
the one
model?
that's better is good as well.
Neil and Kate are now typing. What about you, Abby? Which do you prefer? Oh, Abby's frozen. Debbie, what about you?
I'm voting for not what you asked for. I'm voting for you have to give in a way that's kind and loving.
Okay, great.
The tzedakah version.
Okay, I'm not forcing everybody to end up on the Jewish answer. That's fine. I think there's actually something appealing to both of these religions and to both of their models. Julie, what about you?
No, that was a mixture.
Oh, it was a mixture.
You have to do it because it's right, but you have to do it in a loving way. So it was like tzedakah.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay, cool.
Over the other.
Jewish
Of course,
answer
of
out
course.
there.
That is actually,
Both
the
of
Jewish answer is always both, yeah. Kate says tzedakah, and so there's a vote for that model. Neil says he prefers the right thing to do, which is the tzedakah model, since the need is there, whether or not you're feeling the love as the giver at the moment. Okay. Julie, what about you?
Well, there's a way in which the tzedakah one sounds a little bit more like taxes than alms, let's say. But what appeals to me about the tzedakah model is that it feels like it would actually be more consistent. When we leave these sorts of things to everybody's whims, it feels like the people that don't benefit from it are the poor people because they're kind of beholden to the emotions of, I feel like giving, I don't feel like giving. So there's something that feels like it would create a sturdier system if we're based on the tzedakah model.
Yeah. I like that. Like, it's very nice when charity happens, but we can't rely on it. I'll read Kate's last comment here. I like putting money in the tzedakah box every week and then deciding where to give the money based on a more charity sense of what organization or need seems more appealing. I end up giving a lot more money that way. That's really nice. It's, again, a combination where I force myself to give because I just have to into my tzedakah box, but then once I have the money, I can use the impulses of my love or my feeling to direct where to give it. So we should close. Our time is out, but I like that this discussion has produced various votes here because I think, first of all, it echoes the way that we learn here at Kevah, which is in a pluralistic way, which means both that we have lots of different kinds of teachers, but also that we have lots of different kinds of students, and that's the way we want it. So that a lot of ideas end up on the table. And I also like that we had votes for both of these answers because I think it does get to the kind of giving that we are hoping for and trying to participate in on this Giving Tuesday, which is that, yes, of course, we want you to love Kevah and think it's the best thing in the world and just be kind to us because we're a nonprofit organization and we really need your money and, we have such a great connection. Come on, just give to us. But I think we also want people in the community to support learning because we think it's just the right thing to do. We think there should be learning in the community and that it's just the way things ought to be and that everybody should contribute to the flourishing of ideas and education in the Jewish community. So there's a way in which we want charity, but we also want tzedakah. And so too, I think there's a way in which the tradition, the study of the tradition, ends up creating an awareness that both of those principles or models has value. So with that, I think I'll leave it there. I don't want to take up any more of your time, but it's been really a joy to be able to learn with you in this very strange way. But I think it went okay, and hopefully it'll get better and better as we try more and more of these. So thanks for participating, and you can continue to participate by giving on Giving Tuesday, and as you give, keep your local learning organization, keep Kevah in mind.
Thank you so much, David, for a really beautiful teaching today. And on behalf of the whole Kevah board and the staff and everybody at Kevah, we really want to thank you all for participating today and for being part of the Kevah family. So have a good holiday season and hope to see you all again soon.
Thanks, everybody. And thanks, I want to give special thanks to Jamie Pollard, who some of us have heard but hasn't been on screen, who really set this whole thing up. She's really the brain behind all of this learning that allowed us to gather here together. So thanks to her.
Thank you.
All right, bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.